What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the channel. William's Big Red's back. He brought some aftermarket goodies to be putting on it. Wanted me to rebuild a differential. I absolutely burned the living dog snot out of my hands moving this differential. Yeah, we start with a bucket of parts. Have a bucket of differentials. Pour it out on the ground, find the good pieces. Turn around and start laying everything out on the bench. See what we've got. We've got 3 ring gears, 2 pinion gears, 2 covers, 2 housings. This one's got no bearings in it. The other one had a bearing in it, the pinion bearing. The backing plates look about the same, so we're going to grab the one without the pinion bearing in it because that's the easiest. We'll throw this thing on the stove, add some heat. That way the material expands and getting the pinion bearing in there is easy. While we're waiting for that to heat up, we've got the pinion bearing in the freezer. We'll turn around and take the cover. We'll put the new bearing and seal in the side cover. Get that taken care of. Now, further on in the video, there is a little clip showing one of the ring gears that was in there. This is the best ring gear out of the 3. One of the ring gears had some chipped teeth. You'll see that further on in the video. Here we're pulling the splines off of the pinion gear because this is the one that needs a new bearing. This one getting used. I noticed something also with the pinion gears. They have 10 and 11 tooth pinion gears, so you can actually change the gearing in the Big Red differentials. They both mesh together on the ring gear nicely. The second pinion gear I was trying to get apart for future use to make it a little bit easier because, well, I was pulling nuts off of pinion gears anyway, see if we can get them both off. Now, this one, it didn't matter how much heat I put on it, it just did not want to come off. So, the one ring gear, the 11-tooth ring gear, still has the bearing race on it, and it's still together because, well, I wasn't going to destroy it getting it apart. I tried. I wasn't really going to put a lot of effort into it because the pinion gear that goes with this ring gear and meshes nicely is the other one that came apart. So we have a matching gear set. That will be going back in the differential once we get it all back together, which is rather simple. Just put it all back together. We got to tap the bearing and stuff out. As you can see, this bearing blew apart, so we've got to get the inner 2-piece races out, which is no big deal. Just a little bit of tappa, and they come back off. And then we'll turn around and put the new bearing in. As you can see, this is the 11 and 10 tooth pinions. They are different. They are shaped different. The ends, one of them's milled over, one of them's squared off. But they do fit in the same hole, and they do mesh on the gears very well. There's no tooth skipping or anything else. It's really smooth. This is a wasted ring gear. As you can see as I roll this around, some of those teeth are chipped horribly. I am a little curious if we can weld them back up and grind them down and redo the teeth. This may be something that I will get into a little bit in the future. I know cast is a little bit hard to weld, but if you preheat it, it does weld pretty well. And then you have to cool it really slowly or the welds will crack and pop off. You are, after all, putting a cast material in with a weld, which is not technically cast. Now I'm going to fit the new bearing on, grab a little piece of aluminum that I've got laying around, and we will tap the new pinion, or the old pinion, in a new bearing. And yes, I did put grease in that bearing. These differentials are at such harsh angles that it's kind of hard to make sure there's lube getting in there, so I grease them first to make sure that they are lubed for a while. Put the gun on a nut, tighten it down, pinion is done. Gotta wait for the cases to heat up so that we can drop the new bearing in there. Still sitting on the oven, getting nice and hot, and yes, I did 3-finger burn the absolute dog snot out of my fingers. The heat transferred through the welding gloves, and oh boy, that was hot. Fuck! Through the gloves. All right, so we go back to the house. We go into the freezer. We pull the small pinion bearing out of the freezer. It's nice and cold. The case is nice and hot. We grab the one pinion that doesn't have the bearing on it, use it as a driver to put in the small end bearing, grease up the small end bearing, put it in pinion gear, tap it down into place. Because of the heat, it doesn't take a lot of force, it doesn't take a lot of work. You just got to make sure you get it down in there fully. Once that's done, you pull the old knocker pinion out, you drop the new set in. It falls right down in place with a little bit of wiggle. Got to get it in those bearings. So you grease up that bearing so those needle bearings do not fall out. And we'll put the specialty nut back in that holds everything together. Get that fancy smancy tool out. Hand thread it down. Make sure the threads are not cross-threading. And we'll turn around. We'll get a gun on it. We'll zip it down good and hard. No, I do not torque these things. They do have a little dink spot. You get in there with a punch and a hammer. You dink over the thing. It locks it in place. You're good to go. Now, I'm going to let this cool off for a little while after we get the axle bearing in place. I actually turn around and run this thing underwater to get it to cool off because it was so hot it actually started to soften the bearing seals. So yeah, turn around, run it underwater, let it cool off for a little bit. Fingers are starting to blister up pretty good. It is my dominant hand. Gotta love it. That's just my luck. Of course, doing the stupid double test, we're going to touch it to make sure it's not hot. Why? Because burning yourself once is just not enough. Because I don't have a socket that fits those big seals, I did ironically have some crank bearings that fit nicely over there. So we'll stack the crank bearings up. Grab our little knocker. We'll knock the seal down in place. That will be completed. After you get the seal in place, you take it off, you set it on the bench, you spin things to make sure that the bearing is still good. Spins nice and freely, no problems, good to go. Turn around, and we got to put the covers together to make sure the ring and the pinion mesh correctly. That is after I do a little squirrel, and we put the seal in the other side of the case. Now we're going to put the ring gear on there and the cover, get everything squished together, make sure it's got the right amount of play, clean everything up. Once we get it back apart, goop it up with some llama bond. Don't put it on too thick, just need it to make a seal, don't need it to squish all the way out. Get the bolts in it, crank this down nice and tight. We have a completely rebuilt rear differential. Now, it did get hit with a wire wheel and repainted. No, that's not in the video. That was after the fact. And then we're going to get back to working on the Nerf bars. Get these U-bolts for the rear mounts of the Nerf bars cut down in size so there's not 3 inches of bolt sticking down underneath the three-wheeler. Get hung up on everything and look dumb as can be. Get them all cut off. Get these Nerf bars up there, mounted, and square. Turned out really good. I really appreciate you guys clicking on these videos and watching them all the way through. Helps out the channel, pushes the videos. If you can comment on these things, it really helps the videos out that much more. More comments means they get pushed out to more and more people. We are live streaming after 8:30, 9 o'clock, pretty much nightly Final Fantasy XIV gameplay. All kinds of different content in that. You got mechanical questions or anything like that, want to come just hang out? Come on, twitch.com Sawyer Custom or Sawyer Custom Gaming on YouTube. Either way, we're live streaming. This lifted 86 Big Red sitting on 35. The custom Nerf bars were just a neat little addition to put on there. She's going to be heading back to the mud pit. We got a last little rollout. This is before I put the Nerfs on it, but this is Big Citra, which I built, and William's Big Red, which he built. Oh, they back up so nicely. Those things are so cool. Just love it. Comments, guys. Hit that subscribe button. Let's get this channel monetized and going. Thanks a lot. I'll see y'all in the next one.